All right, I'm gonna go ahead and set up the camera. So this is one of those days. I sort of re-envisioned what the start of this podcast would sound like, maybe 3 or 4 times. And honestly, up until about 20 minutes ago, I was going to go on some sort of rant that just sort of verbalized all of my frustrations that I've been feeling for the last week or so. But I think the word today that I want to stress, and if you don't hear anything else out of whatever I'm about to say, it's, educate yourself, educate each other. Put yourself into other people's shoes. You might not understand, but your support is needed now more than ever. I'm speaking to black people. I'm speaking to white people, Asian people, purple people, green people, anyone who's willing to listen and to help. Just like many other people, I can probably speak for Koney and DJ Swale. There's just been, again, anger. There's been confusion, frustration. The life of a black man, a black woman is exhausting at times. And I'm just sort of sick of having this conversation over and over and over again. And the margins between each incident seems to get slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And since many use this so callously, especially our media, our administration. So let me put this word into proper context as I continue. A group of thugs entered the house and murdered Breonna Taylor. A group of thugs hunted down, cornered, and murdered Ahmaud Arbery. A group of thugs sat around and contributed to the death of a man named George Floyd. And again, now is not the time to tell us that we are just seeing things and it's all in our head. This isn't the time to start with the all lives matter bullshit. And the fact that we have an administration that, instead of calling out the root cause of everything that's going on, would rather take the time to express that violent protest will be confronted with more violence. This is Elevated Radio. I am LB along with Koney and DJ Swale. We will take time to reflect over the moments that have consumed our thoughts for the last week. We will speak to action items that we each hope to take in the coming future. And hopefully, we stay on topic. How you guys doing?
I mean, it's been one hell of a week, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, like, what else can you say? What else?
It's not much.
What else needs to be said, honestly?
You know, I've when it happened, and again, since this is something that has continued to cripple and numb our community for decades and even decades before me, I think this time felt a little bit different than other times, just with the amount of initial support from all sides. Typically, when things like this happen, and I'm speaking specifically with George Floyd, there's a lot of narrative play at work. There's a lot of, oh, what did he do? This, that, and the third. But this time didn't really feel like that. It seemed like there are a lot of people that understood blatantly clear what they were seeing in front of them was murder, was a racially driven incident. And, you know, I don't know. It's been difficult to just sort of like collect my thoughts as far as like what I wanted to even do. Because like many black people, your initial feeling might be hopelessness of, man, damn, they killed another one, but am I going to bother going out in the street? Am I going to bother making a post? Am I going to bother saying anything? Because it seems like for so long we've just been ignored. right? We've been told, oh, this is a one isolated incident. This doesn't happen like this. Slavery ended so long ago. Racism doesn't exist. But it's hard for me to hear that when, you hear our president, like I said, say, when they loot, we'll shoot. But if you recall the Charleston protests and those white supremacists, he didn't have that same energy. And matter of fact, he defended them to a certain light in saying that they were just defending themselves because they were attacked first. It's disgusting.
The issue that I'm also having is that we have seemed to really forget the whole purpose of having a legal system, of having a courthouse, of having a preliminary, of having a trial. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And so when I'm seeing people on social media saying, well, what did George Floyd do? Or what did any of these victims do? It doesn't matter what they did. They didn't warrant a death sentence. At the end of the day, they still had a right by trial and a right, to be judged by their peers, not to be killed just because they came in contact with law enforcement. Their job is to obtain the suspect and hand it over to the courts so that they can see if they did something, if they're guilty of something. And it just seems like when a black life is taken, that same protocol is not followed. That same protocol is not what we get. And it's honestly disgusting. How do you create a whole system and then don't even use it?
Yeah,
right.
The system has been broken from the start. Like, a lot of people tend to think that once black men and women became free and segregation ended, that everyone just got a fresh start. No. And the sad honest truth is that policies and other circumstances of oppression have continued to push us further back from progress. And all it takes for white people or anyone else, even black people who somehow can't wrap their minds around why what happens today is directly affected by our history, then you continue to see examples from, well, where did the Star Spangled Banner come from? Right? What came from that? You wonder why there's a ton of white people. Ballantyne is probably made up of like 75% white people. You might be curious to know that there's maybe one Waffle House within the 20-mile radius in Ballantyne. There are hardly any McDonald's. There are hardly any Popeyes. The tracks are there, right? Redlining, which caused, if you're from Charlotte, if you really want to take a trip down memory lane, look no further than Brooklyn, which was once a thriving black community in Charlotte, located just around where currently the NASCAR Hall of Fame is. And redlining on the heels of segregation policies were put into place so that houses predominantly occupied by black people were not offered certain loans to be able to build equity, and just stricken by that disadvantage has set forward all of the the lack of opportunity for black people to thrive today. I don't want to, Swale, let me get your thoughts real quick. I don't want to go off on a rant because that's not what I was trying to do today.
Yeah. Like we said, I don't know. I think people don't realize, people keep saying like the system is broken. I don't think it's broken. It was just, never made for us in the first place. So something that's not made for you is not broken. It's like acting how like it's supposed to act. You know what I mean? I think with the George Floyd in specific, still trying to wrap my hand around it, because how a lot of people feel now, like I felt like years ago with Trayvon, and I felt like what's going on now should have happened like years ago. And now people are starting to do it. So I'm still trying to like kind of like you just said, like, should I go out there? Should I protest? How long is it going to last? Because last time we tried this, it was only a couple days. Then people forgot about it. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around, like, just him. Like, just the concept of, like, what actually happened. Like you said, we see it so much. You know, cops kill a black person. It's kind of like we're mad for a week. And then the next week, you know, the baby's dropping an album. And we're talking about that now.
I think also what's important to note here is that now I feel like it's not just us. And when I say us, I mean us physically here in the United States, but you're starting to see protests all around the world. And that's going to put political pressure from those people in those countries, you know, with dealing with the United States in general. And I think it's starting to take a bigger effect because a lot more people now are really starting to realize, like, okay, we do have a serious problem. And kind of like you said, OB, like, we're not just blowing smoke. It's not just something, you know, black people see. Like, people are really starting to see how there's really an issue. And specifically with George Floyd case, you can see in the video, if you all have seen it, he's already handcuffed and on the ground. And he's telling you, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You know, he's asking for help. And a lot of people don't know this either, but policemen and firefighters are also first responders. If someone is in need of help, if whatever the case may be, whether they can't breathe or they got a cut, like, they're obligated to help that person. And it was because of that neglect, and we already know the reason why of that neglect, a lot more people are like, oh shit, like, he literally just murdered this guy on camera. So I think it's not just a black community problem. It never was just a black community problem, but I think a lot of other people are starting to realize it's not just our problem anymore.
Yeah. And then didn't it come out that he's worked with this guy? Like, this wasn't a complete stranger.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they didn't have like a formal relationship, but
they work for the same.
It was like a club, right? Something
bar
like
club
that.
Or something like that.
Yeah. In one of them, at least, for 17 years. Right? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, the proof is there. Like, if you can't identify that this was a racially charged incident, you know, and
it could have all been avoided. Just like many of these other situations, it could have all been avoided. How hard would it have been for one of them to just say, "Hey, move your knee for a second"? Yeah. How hard would that have been?
I mean, like you said, it shouldn't even went that far. Like, you're in handcuffs. Like, what do you think he's gonna do?
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about us as a people. I understand a lot of us want to record these situations, to have the evidence, to have proof, but we have to just stop standing there and letting some of these events happen.
I hear you, but, you know,
we need
because of the images that we constantly see. I mean, do I want to go in there? Because
not saying they might physically assault them or, you know.
No, I get it.
Go again, but how hard would it have been for maybe people to create a distraction across the street, where one of them would literally have to go respond? You know what I'm saying? Or just something as simple as that. Like,
no, I get it. I just think that, you know, for many of us, the images that we continuously see put that fear in our hearts of, well, yeah, I could intervene, but if he's willing to do this in front of me with this man, like, I might be in the line of fire if I do intervene, even if it is just to say, hey, what are you doing? Because, you know, I think we can assume he knew what he was doing, right? I mean, I would just, you know, I'm worried about that. And that also just kind of trickles on to the accountability portion. I think it was helpful that many officers on social media and other departments were speaking out about this. And, you know, maybe I just wasn't paying attention or wasn't looking before, but it didn't seem like that was something that I saw a lot of before. You know, they protected the boys in blue and the whole Blue Lives Matter thing. And again, there were a few differences and different nuances to this case that do provide some optimism that maybe, just maybe, a few of these incidences have driven us closer to that cliff of the change that we finally, hope to see. With that said, I did say, educate. And this is always the sensitive topic, because what I would just challenge our community to do, because I have to start with our community. I can't, I can't speak to the audience of the lost and incoherent. Let me speak to us first. We can't get so lost in protest, and I don't care if it's violent, if it's peaceful. We can't get lost in what we need to do in steps 2, 3, and 4. If you think for whatever reason that you leaving your house and circling the block a few times with a nice sign and some pictures for Instagram, to think that you can return home and your part in this is finished, you're mistaken. This is a time, like Killer Mike said, in Atlanta, like, this is a time to mobilize and strategize and unify for what we need, the real battle. Because the real people making these decisions are the ones that are least involved.
Right.
So in order to, it took a video coming out about the Ahmaud's case for even any action to take place. If you remember, that police department was trying to sweep that under the rug.
They said that no, there was no case.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. And then Breonna Taylor, I deeply feel that obviously that one didn't get enough national attention just because of, there wasn't a video. But for those who don't know, Breonna Taylor was asleep in her house with her boyfriend. And at about midnight, I want to say 3 or 4 officers in plain clothes responded to a no-knock warrant, which means you are allowed access to search and enter a home without announcing yourself as an officer.
Wow.
So think about this. You're asleep in your home and an officer in plain clothes, not even wearing their gear. I'm sure there were no body cams because we probably would have seen the clip, right? What happens is apparently the boyfriend hears something, starts to move closer to the door gets kicked down, and he fires in response to that, injures an officer, and then to retaliate, that's what led to Breonna Taylor's death. Oh, and then you want to throw the icing on the cake. The guy that they were looking for did not even live there, and he was already in police custody earlier that day.
Yeah, crazy. It's crazy.
So please, I beg anyone, this is the 3rd incident, because that happened in March. Ahmaud, I'm not sure. That was February. Okay.
23rd.
And then you have George Floyd just recently. So we've got 3 incidences when we're not even outside of the house within the last, to start the year. Like, this is ridiculous. And again, we know that this isn't going to be solved overnight, right? Like, people are being charged currently. I don't believe that those officers in Louisville are being charged. I think they were just fired. So there's already an issue. And again, like I just said, we understand these things don't take place, and we know justice may be served, it may not, whatever the case is, but it just sickens me, the administration that we have that refuses to just take a moment to expound on. Swale and I were looking at the interviews, and the reporter blatantly asked if his opinion on the peaceful NFL protest changed, and his opinion on that changed at all, just due to all of the violence going on right now. He couldn't answer that question straight up. All he could focus on was how those violent protesters were tarnishing the name of George Floyd, but couldn't take any more time to discuss how an incident like this can never happen again. Yeah. We just need empathy. But again, you can't expect empathy from the uneducated. You can't expect empathy with the people who are in charge of controlling the narrative.
Right.
So it's up to us to change that narrative ourselves. And that's why I said, accountability, educate. Because at the end of the day, I got love for everybody out there, whether, you know, and I know you're angry. I know you're upset. I know you're in pain. I know you want to destroy stuff, but we got to think beyond that. And this isn't a time to turn against each other and demonize each other. I went on a limb to not necessarily defend the remarks that Desi and B Simone made, because again, those comments for them comes from a place of being either misinformed or just they have their own level of pain that they are facing themselves. And in these moments, we say things. And in social media, sometimes we don't take enough time to just sit down. Should they have taken time to sit down? Absolutely. They should have taken time to stay away from social media. But what I urge our community to understand is at the end of the day, we are all on the same side here. And if we continue to feed into cancel culture and, oh, we're done with these people and, oh, we do this, that's not bringing us any closer together. And we're creating a new trending topic on top of what we need to be focusing on.
Facts.
So that's all I would say. We do need to continue to hold each other accountable, and we do need to tell, hey, Desi, you know, that's not what you should say.
Right.
But it's just like a bad kid. If they act up and do this and that, you don't disown the child. You pull the child and you say, hey, look, we need to do this, and the third. Right? So we just need to treat them the same way, because at the end of the day, we are fighting the same battle. Simple as that.
I just need everyone to stay focused, because this is not over. Yes, they have charged the officers in the George Floyd case and the Ahmaud case, but they still have to go to trial. Yeah. So I need for everyone to still keep the momentum, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not doing anything, then start, because it's not over. Not over until we get a conviction, not over until we get suitable jail time and consequences for their actions. And just an update, if you don't already know, the Ahmaud Arbery case, all three men their cases have been moved to court, and all of the charges that were brought against them stuck. So they will be charged with everything that they were arrested with: assault, murder. And then, of course, the guy who recorded, aiding and abiding and
clown
assisting.
Yeah. And again, to those communities that are not as close to this, I've had a lot of friends that are white to reach out and just say, hey, look, I have no idea what to tell you right now. I honestly don't. But just know I support you. So many people need to understand that is plenty enough. Just to extend your support. As I said, educate. If you have not read or listened to the 1619 Project posted by the New York Times, I suggest you check it out. You can, there's a podcast available, 7 episodes, very easy listen, but just speaks to Black people's place in America's history, from the time that we were forcefully brought overseas, leading up to civil rights and what have you. But it's I can't stress how important it is. They did an incredible job with the story. If you haven't found or read about Brooklyn, a community that was once a thriving Black community in Charlotte, check that out. There's even a museum whenever there's an exhibit whenever those open up. I believe at the I forget which museum it was at. I just recently went to it, but definitely check that out. Just continue to and just think for a moment, if you're seeing these scenarios play up, just imagine all of the stories, all of the Georges, all of the Briannas that we don't hear from because they're in such small communities that their story will never see the light of day. A lot of times, if you notice, most of these stories come from highly populated areas, larger cities, so on and so forth. So the fight extends far beyond these three, and we just need to keep that in mind as we protect each other.
Also, some other action items, if you haven't already done so, there's a Black Out Coalition group on Facebook. It gives you helpful information about places in your area who have Black-owned businesses, whether it's hair, nails, Black-owned gun stores, all of that type of information. It also talks about the next moves that the movement is taking. So it's a very, very helpful group. It's people from all over. It's like over 1 million members in this group. So definitely check that out. Once again, it's the Blackout Coalition, and it is on Facebook. And also, if you're here in Charlotte, if you need a list of Black-owned businesses, whether it's for tires or banking or whatever it is, definitely don't hesitate to message the Elevated Radio page. We have a list for anyone who needs it. So just remember that we have to not only keep pushing, keep the momentum, but also still support our community. Because like we all know, coronavirus is still out there. So some people are still out of work. Some people, still need